Hello, everybody.
Hello.
My name's Sharon, if you don't know that already. I am with the Washington Poor People's Campaign, and I had the idea for this event in March, and it was sitting on the back burner for a while, and then a couple months ago I said, we should do it. So I've been working on it for several weeks, and now we're all here. And I'm so grateful for every single one of you. I can't even begin to tell you, including those of you who are online right now. Between everybody in this room and the people who are with us virtually, we have raised almost $3,200. So that is amazing. I can't even begin to tell you how just all of the good feelings. So I'm going to pass it along to our esteemed panel. We are joined today by our moderator, Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown. And it is thanks to her that we have this beautiful space today. So we thank you again for that. Also on our panel, we have the filmmaker, director, and executive producer of Since I've Been Down, Gilda Shepherd.
That's right. We are honored.
Oh, God bless you.
And then we have a couple of familiar faces from the film that we just watched. We have Kimonti Carter.
Let's just stay up.
And we have Willie Nobles. And we have Ginny Parham. So from your responses, I know that you know how special every single one of these people is and how important the work is that they're doing. So I'm thrilled to pass it along to the panel.
We thank you for taking your time out of your life, out of your day, to be witness to this fantastic film. We are honored not only to have the filmmaker here, who is also a member at this church, but we'll for which we are grateful. But this is really an opportunity in the context of the Poor People's Campaign to really think about what does it mean to turn tables? What does it mean to shift things? I'm not going to get too churchy, and if you come on Sundays, I'm not that churchy then either. But I think about there's a part in Isaiah that says, what's low will be raised, since I've been down, right? And what's up will be lowered. That's what justice means, according to Isaiah. And so I would love to hear from each of you, in no particular order, how do you, and I think it's so important because it showed up in the movie, as folks were trying to define justice. After being in the juvenile justice system, right, it's the courtroom, it's the judge, it's all of those features that you're most familiar with. But how do you define justice, and how is it different from what I would call the injustice system? But how is it different from the system that we call a justice system?
That's a good question. And I would just to, to start off, first and foremost, man, thank you all for, showing up, continuing to support the film, continuing to support not only the Poor People's Movement, but also, the Black Prisoners Caucus and all of the work that we've been, fortunate enough to be able to do with you guys' support, So I wanted to, really give calls to that, and man, I thank you guys for just everything that you guys have been able to do to support us in our journey. And so, when I think about justice, right, my idea of justice is the return back to equity, right? Like how do we create a balance in a system? And
You're okay. This is a challenge for us all the time, and we're grateful for the expertise of Ricky over here in the room, making things work. So, the microphone speakers, if it's probably unidirectional. So if you hold it to your mouth and pretty close, that would be better for us, I think.
Okay. And that's always really been about it, right? And so, for, the Black Prisoners Caucus, what we found was that we was denied access to education. And so the TEACH program, like my good friend Marco Rodriguez, ultimately pointed out in the film, was like the TEACH program for us was justice. Right? Because it was our way of being able to bring some balance back to the injustice that many of us was facing. And so when we think about the movements that we're doing in the community, the Poor People's Campaign, Shoulder to Shoulder, many of the organizations and programs and movements that's being created and led by people who are directly impacted, you guys are justice, right? You guys your presence is providing justice to an injustice system. And so, to me, justice is bringing back balance.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, again, for showing up and coming out. How do you follow that, huh? I think I stand on the same principles as Mr. As Carter. But I think for me, I'm going to take a different perspective of it. I'm going to say, well, for me, what justice is equality, right? I believe that everyone should go through the same prison system or through the same system the same way, right? For us, we understand that these laws are put together, right, to benefit some and not others, right? So for me, it's that equality aspect of it, right? I believe that justice should be justice all the way around, not just because my skin's a little bit darker than yours. So that's what I believe. And I also stand with Mr. Carter. I know we're all going to have the same principles because we believe in the same thing, right? So just that's what it is for me.
Thank you.
I want to piggyback off of Willie. I believe that justice is when those same laws that call our children super predators, those same laws that lock up people for life, the 3 strikes you're out, hard time for armed crime, when those laws are overturned, that's what I believe is justice.
I'm wondering if you can hear me without the mic. Yeah, my mother was in theater, and so she taught me how to project. And she also taught me how to be quiet. And I think that sometimes is also justice. When I did
The
this
folks
film,
online don't hear you, though.
oh, the people online don't hear me. I'm so sorry. So here I go back. So I think that I want to talk to you a little bit about my evolution to understanding what justice is.
All right.
I used to contribute or think about justice when someone committed a crime. That's when justice opened its door. I didn't realize that where we start the narrative determines our pathway to justice. Okay, so I think that children, when they are born, that's when justice happens.
That's right.
Okay, that it is a process and it is married to, close friends to, hope. And hope is a discipline. As Marian Kaba, the phenomenal organizer, says, that hope is not, hey, somebody from the Poor People's Campaign.
All right.
All right, those who know Marian Kaba, let's hear a clap. All right. That's what I'm talking about. That's justice. Knowing this black woman who says that hope is a discipline. It is something that it needs to be intentional. You have to think about it every day. My grandmother used to sing this song, those who believe in freedom cannot rest until it
comes. That's right.
Yes, till it comes. And you think you got it and it moves. You think you got it and it moves. So justice is a continuing practice of love, of possibility, of hope, of knowing when to stand up and say something and knowing when to listen, as I learned from these folks right here who taught me so much. Their practice of justice and patience with me is what taught me, would help this film be as beautiful as it is. So I learned to be quiet.
All right. Sharon, I love you. You've given me questions to go by, and Lord God, bless my heart. I'm going to just try to go on my own a little bit. I'm going to take Oprah and give everybody a car and go there. But really, based on what you said, I'm just so inspired because one of the things, I've seen this movie several times now, praise God, right? Every time I see something new. And this time I got upset when I saw the book of photographs, the blue book of photographs, because I grew up, my grandmother raised me. And we had those books. So that's how I saw the picture of my great grandmother, Kizzy, who died at 104. And it looked very much like that book. It was green instead of blue, but it had like the gold embossed thing and had like photograph on the front. And what made me mad today was to see were they detectives? Pull the book out and be proud to leaf through the pictures like, oh, they were brilliant. They knew how many ounces were in a, no. That's our role, right? That's the mama's role to have pride in you, right? But also on the flip side, based on what you just shared, when they were asked what justice is, they didn't have an answer. So for me, I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on the people that we usually push out into the world to say, you are the holders of what justice means. But on the backside, they have nothing to say. And the other piece that I would love for your response on is at the end, the brilliant Dr. Gilda Shepherd put a statement to say that y'all were still in prison and you all are sitting here. If that's not enough to make me shout up in here, I don't know what to... That part will take me out of here. But I just want to hear your thoughts on that book, perhaps, and just what you think about what I've said.
I'd like to start.
Please.
I was sharing with a woman outside in the hallway that book always, every time I see that book, I cry. That book has our babies our babies' pictures in there. Those detectives used to hunt our children, and like the Reverend said, they couldn't even tell us the definition of justice.
Right.
One of the detectives said he was proud of the work that he did. He was proud of hunting our children. I'll tell you a story, and it's really a hard story. Willie was 12 on the streets, and all his little friends came running up to the house. And they said, Willie's missing. The cops got Willie. The cops got Willie.
Oh, Lord God.
I called for hours down to Raymond Hall, the juvenile center. He wasn't there. So I started calling the Pierce County Jail. He wasn't there either. 3 hours went by. I had no idea where my son was. When Willie came running up to the house, I said, where have you been? Those 2 police officers had kidnapped my child, took him way out into the boonies somewhere, and showed him 2 unmarked graves and said that's where they were going to bury him. So that's those police officers that opened up that book with our babies' pictures in it.
Mercy.
Wow. I think for me, that's another one of those moments, right? To reminisce and just know how far we've come.
Have mercy.
Because for me, that was part of the life, right? That was part of our lifestyle. That book back then really meant you was doing what you was supposed to do if you got in that book, right? So for us, we look at it different with a different view now, right? With a different vision, a different understanding. because back then I wanted to be in the book because now I was getting notarized, right? Now they knew who I was on the streets. So for them to put a book together to give us notary as a kid, as I think now, like, it's ridiculous, right? And we know it's ridiculous, especially dealing with the system for over 25 years, being incarcerated. And the funny thing you said is at the end of the film, you seen and said that we were still incarcerated, right?
Here you are.
we was supposed to, right? But I think at the end of the day, God had a bigger plan. And so for when you ask me, is that justice for the police? I think us understanding that demographic, it was their justice. That's the way they worked. Was it right? No, but that's the way they worked, and that's why they didn't even have an understanding of what justice really is.
Thank you.
Short is like that's the thing that stood out to me. The same thing that Jenny just said, right? Is that these are police officers who was essentially meeting with the FBI and the CIA, and what they're bringing to give them credibility is a book full of kids. You know what I mean? Right? Like they're literally bringing these books. Like he went down to the office to get the book out,
right? Because
they was using this as their way of these are the criminals that we're hunting for, right? And every last one of those kids in most of those pictures, and they were smiling. Right? And that just lets you know just how kind of far removed, many of us were from what was actually transpiring in our community. You know what I'm saying? Because like he said, it's like getting in the book meant like, okay, yeah, you're active. If you're on gang file, then even the police acknowledge you as a gang member. Right? And so as a young 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old kid, it's like you don't know no different. You don't know that you're being tracked and documented and labeled and categorized as a way of being able to build up this case, which ultimately they end up using on a group of kids from the Hilltop community a much time later. But that's the thing that sticks out to me is that, these are kids, right? And they was able to justify it. And whoever their superiors were signing off on it. You guys are doing a great job. Go out here and get these criminals off the streets. And all they was doing was rounding up our kids. So, yes, it's pretty unfortunate.
Sad.
Thank you.
Real quick, and even the kids would go to the police and tell them they want to be in the book. Right? That's how sad that was. Like, you would literally see your friends go to the police and be like, I want to be in the book. Here's my tattoos. Show my pictures. That's the trap that we was in, and we didn't even know.
Mercy.
There's brain science, right, that says now that up to 20 years old, that you can possibly come in and get the possibility of being resentenced. But the brain science goes to 25 when your brain is developed. Being the filmmaker and looking for those two police officers, I got a lot of flack for including them. But that's what art does. Sometimes art can rub people the wrong way, even the people that you ally with. You have to remember that. I hope you all disagree with each other. I hope you do. And so when I'd done a lot of research on these two officers, right, and I'd heard their names, so there came from really the community, right? And so one was living somewhere else, and so I wanted to bring him. I said, I even pay for your plane fare, because I needed his voice. So he came and he brought his friend. And I had done research and found out about this book. I didn't ask them to bring it, but he bought the book. And I want to tell you now, I am not saying that I put those two police officers there so that you can chastise them. Oh, you got the wrong point from me. But if you want to do that, go right ahead. I wanted you to see policing and the culture of policing. If you just put your fingers on those two, that's not,
it's too small.
That's on you. But that's not what I wanted. I wanted you to, and for them to say they never thought about that, who are we blaming? What did Tanya say? That they are us.
That's right.
We are conciliatory oftentimes in these problems. So where do you see yourself in there is what I want to know. Don't just other them.
Right.
Where did you see yourself in there? What did you think justice was? Did you just see those two police officers and not look at how they were trained at policing? Did you ever see them as children? Ever wonder why what happened to and why they got in that game? Or does your analysis stop? Or would you have voted for 3 strikes you're out when you know that these young kids, I don't know, these young children were out with AK-47's brains not developed and your child was walking to school? What would you have done? I want you to think about that. Just think of, and what you do now. I want you to just think about that. This film was made because I love children and because it made me uncomfortable some of the things that I used to think about.
That's right.
And I think it's very important to be uncomfortable. Right? And so, and I told the police officers, I'm going to ask you what is justice. I told them that so that they can think about it. Because I'm not into ambushing.
Right.
I'm going to get them. Don't use the master's tools to tear down the master's
Come
house,
on, Audre
says
Lorde.
Audre Lorde.
That's right.
So what are you going to do? I'm going to get them. I'm going to cancel their culture. I ain't canceling nothing. If cancel culture was the thing, Kamonte Carter and Willie Nobles would not have gone over to the white nationalist gang.
That's right. That's
not
right.
gone over to the other gang as well. What other gang are you all going to? Right? When I meet Jenny Parham, and I see the work that she does on her own, funded by herself.
Wow.
Going, making democracy work, right?
That's right.
And she is known by some of those police officers and bailiffs there. I saw her navigate a courtroom, the police officers move out the way, all those kinds of things. So I want them to serve and protect. And I'm a prison abolitionist.
Yes.
And I want to defund the police. But when you unravel that, I want to see more counselors and social workers and folks like that in schools, not the thousands of police officers you see with guns. I want them to be re-socialized and talked to.
Come on.
So, I mean, who's your enemy? And then look in the mirror and say, what are you doing? So I don't want you to think, oh, those 2 bad cops. Where do you start the narrative? Yeah.
The real thing is stopping with the 2 police officers is way too small, right? And it's way too easy. I remember sitting with my grandmother years ago when Oprah Winfrey was new. And I started to notice something really fast, that you could be in the audience and be as terrible could be, but it wouldn't matter because you weren't on the stage, right? The people on the stage always were pointed at. How could you, you know, but you could be in the audience and ask that question and no one would ever know any of the things because we weren't privy to what was happening in the audience. And essentially that's what you were inviting us to. What I was pulling up is not to punish the 2, but to always hold a mirror up for us. Because when I see, you know, I was laughing too because this time I saw President Clinton with new eyes. I already knew about the super predator and the 3 strikes and that stuff. So, but you know, in my community in Columbus, Georgia, people would say he was the first black president.
Toni Morrison.
Right, Toni Morrison said it, that's right. But look here, all these years later.
Yeah, right. I think she regrets that, but.
So I'm just thinking about who we are as a culture and as a people, as a community. And essentially, Mary Flowers is one of the most clear voices I've ever heard in my life. We really need to.
Oh,
Mary Flowers, she's not hiding, so I don't want to say that. But she hangs out with the city of Seattle does a little work there. But her real work is to just come into spaces and just break it open. Wherever she goes, she is incredible. And I remember when her son was unfortunately killed, and I went to that funeral to be with her. What was she doing? She was holding people. She was letting people cry to her when she was the mama. So we have to answer this question about being a culture of punishment. We have to say something about that, because even in our little groups, Gilda, we have the things of, wow, if I hadn't met Kamonte by way of this movie, I don't know if I would have ever, given someone like him a chance. That's right. Well, that's on us, not you. So what do you see about the shifts in culture that need to happen so we aren't so lustful for the crime and punishment kind of way that we do things? What needs to change in us?
I would just say is that we have to stop allowing incidents to become politicized. Right? I think that too many times, right, we allow politicians to kind of play the we need to protect ourselves role, right? And so now, in order for us to be able to protect ourselves, we need to vote this way, right? And so tough on crime has always been the way in which we've been led. But I think if tough on crime worked, it would have worked by now. Right? Tough on crime has been happening for a very long time, right? And so all that happens is we get more prisons. We find ways of being able to criminalize and police, more communities of color, and low-income communities, right? And then all we try to do is find ways of being able to trick people into the system. And so, I think that when it comes to, criminalization, we have to, as a community, as a society, man, I think that we have to begin to, not allow ourselves to only consider what the punishment looks like, right? But what do we need to do as a way of being able to create some human alternatives? Now we need to start thinking about restorative justice. Now we need to start thinking about, all of these alternatives to be able, before we lead people into the criminal justice system, because we know what happens once they get there, right? And so I think it's about time for us to be able to heal, right? We have to start getting back to healing, to wellness, to safety, and we have to do it collectively, right? And so until we begin to start having those conversations and to become familiar with one another, right? Because even at the Poor People's Campaign, right, we're still going to have to deal with some middle class folks. We're going to have to still deal with some rich folks. Right? We're still going to have to build community.
That's right.
And so at the end of the day, man, I think that our voice has to be what our politicians are taking to Olympia.
That's right.
Our voice.
That's right.
Not the other way around. They're not coming here to tell us that this is what we need in order for them to kind of get the check or the approval of community in order for them to go and do their worst in Olympia, right? I think that it has to get back to the place where the legislators and the senators of our cities and our states, that they represent the people's voice.
That's right. I just want to, before you answer, I just want to lift up something powerful. Not that everything you're saying isn't powerful, all of you, but something you just said, and it's interesting, especially for us representing the Poor People's Campaign. Often we get locked in these conversations that are more rightly poverty porn. Right? It's like, flay out all your stuff so that we can see if you're actually worthy, right, for our sympathies. So I'm grateful for the way you answered that, Kamonte, because it's not like, even though it's true, right? I had a tough life, and, my childhood wasn't what, all of that stuff, because what it's doing is, for those of us who are privileged in whatever way we are, for those of us who are even outside of this experience, it gives us the ability to really hear your voice rather than the sort of lifetime version of Comanche, where you got, you know what I'm saying? You have to be this certain version in order for us to say, oh, that's so sad. So thank you for bringing forward an image of hope and resilience and strength, because we need to see that more and more, because that's not what we're getting on the 6 o'clock news, right? That's certainly not what we're getting in other places. So thank you, and please feel free to share.
I would just say, as far as punishment goes, with Family Shoulder to Shoulder, we're having a lot of success going into courtrooms, telling judges and prosecutors, we're watching you. And letting and as we're doing that, we're seeing a lot more judges that are seeing the humanity in people that are coming in the front of their courtroom. And I think as a community, we need to keep seeing the humanity in people and see that people are redeemable. I am sitting up here with two phenomenal men.
That's
I
right.
see them as phenomenal men. I don't see them as two men that were convicted of murder.
That's right. Thank you. That's right.
It starts right here, right now. Right. This is what I believe. This is what I know. This is what I'm for sure of. That in numbers, everything is successful. Right? This is what I believe. I understand this. So for me, I want to say it starts with accountability. It starts with community. It starts with relationship building.
Yep.
Right? It starts with coalitions. It starts with us coming together at the end of the day. That's what it starts with. If we're tired of the injustice, if we're tired of everything that's going on, we have to stand up and be accountable.
That's right.
That's what I believe. This is what we stand for. This is what BPC community stands for. This is what the brothers stand for. This is what everyone in this room stands for. And that's why we're here today.
Have mercy.
And I just want to just add one thing, right? Is in, you know, when like me and Willie, right? I think that we're pretty sharp, right? We're pretty
Yeah.
sharp. You know, but I think that, you know, we got sharp by sitting in a circle,
Yeah.
right? Like the BPC circle of life, you know what I'm saying? Let's make no doubt about it. You know what I'm saying? It deserves the credit for the work that it's doing inside prisons to be able to help shape, mold, lead, and encourage young black men to ultimately become accountable men and do what they're supposed to do. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, we are just a couple examples of many more of
Right.
a large, you know, group of brothers, both free and still locked up, right, who we need to be able to connect with. And so, like, when we get to talking about connecting to that brilliance, right, the way that we continue to stay connected to that is we have to go back inside in order to sit in the circles of the Black Prisoners Caucus, right? And now the Black Prisoners Caucus is at 10 different institutions, right? And so, yeah, absolutely. You know what I'm saying? Because, you know, one thing that we begin to realize is that, you know what I'm saying, change and encouragement and self-worth and all of those things, it can become contagious. It can become contagious when you find yourself surrounded by guys who are putting their cards on the table, right? They're exposing their trauma as a way of being able to show you that, listen, I've been able to, this is my lived experience, and this is how I've been able to heal personally and as a collective, you know, as black men, right? Being able to be a part of, you know, a lot of that drama and that violence that we participated in, right? We participated in a lot of the troubles that was happening in the Tacoma community, right? And that's something that we definitely take full responsibility for, right? But I think that as we take responsibility, we're also trying to figure out ways of being able to connect community to the circle, to the circles, you know what I'm saying? Because the community needs to see you. The circle needs to see the community, I should say. And I think that you guys also need to be able to see the kind of conditions that many of those young kids who was locked up as kids who are now growing into young adults, you know what I'm saying, the conditions in which they are in and how they are ultimately coming to to contribute to a better community. So yeah, we got to go back inside, man. The BPC community, the BPC circle of life deserves all the credit for sure.
That's right. Come on.
What I was going to say, this is the time that I need to shut up because you all have said it. That's what I was going to say. But, you know, they always inspire me. I just want you to, when you think about the Black Prisoners Caucus, I want you to also think about the women. There's a Black Prisoners Caucus cohort in the women's prison. I don't know how well it is doing under these circumstances, you know? And, but I want you to always understand that there is a gender and non-gender conformity analysis in all of this when we talk about the culture of punishment. There's a lot of tendencies for people to run to the men's prison. I'm not against that. But there's a margin on the margin.
Yep.
And that happens to deal with particularly women. And I dare say members of the trans community.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it needs to be not only reflected in our words, but in what we do and in our analysis. So, you know, I mean, I even challenge the Black Prisoners Caucus. What about the women?
Right.
They're not sacred. No. We always have to remind each other. I mean, that's the reason why I have a lot of women speaking, telling the story, because I couldn't get in the women's prison like I wanted to. So I had to pay attention to that. And I usually have, because when, you know, there's a Black Prisoners Caucus, but what it is that it's prisoner-initiated programs. And I dare say they are national. Black Prisoners Caucus is a heavy one, but it's one. And so, but at the women's prison, there was a group called The Village. And it was started by the women. It was the most violent prison in Washington State at one point. But when those women, Tanya Wilson, who is usually sitting in a post-screening, and Andrea Altimer, Felicia Dixon, I can go on and on and on and on. When they started the Women's Village, in the most violent prison in Washington State,
Lord.
Violence went down by 50%. And their program was the TEACH program before TEACH. It went across race lines, even though there was a racial cohort. It went across race lines and dared to have dialogue with folks who they disagreed with.
All right.
Based on crime, you know, based on race, based on gender, non-gender conformity. So I'm going to tell you that we need to think about the women when we think about dismantling the culture of punishment, particularly because when a man goes to prison, sometimes the wife or the mother takes care of the children. When a woman goes to prison, oftentimes it's the state.
That's right.
And so I just want you, in the culture of punishment, we need to look at women too, particularly. Thank you.
For those of you who follow him, Trevor Noah's last time was last night, I believe, and in a very poignant moment, he lifted up Black women. And I really appreciated that because there's a book called If It Wasn't for the Women, right? And we really have to understand that because even in our attempts towards justice, we still have so many prejudicial and biased ways of thinking about who to help and who to seek. And so thank you, Dr. Shepherd, for getting us straight and for lifting us up. I also can't even look at you, Dr. Maxine Mims, without honoring you in this space. Please. That's right. For those of you who don't know, Dr. Maxine Mims went to the place that this story was coming out of and said, I'm going to open a college here. The Evergreen State College Tacoma campus. And so it feels like there's a kinship between Dr. Mims and you, Kamanti, and those of you who forged this TEACH program. And I'm also thinking about my hometown. So I'm like, if there's a Bible Belt, my hometown was the buckle, right? it was the South. And I remember doing a tour of my own city, and there was a jazz musician who used to play with Ray Charles, and he said, let's go over to the cemetery. Now, the cemetery in my hometown still has a white side and a black side. And he said, this side over here is where the first black school was, because that was the only reading material for the black children. So they learned to read from the headstones in the cemetery. It may sound sad, but that's a story of resilience to me. Because out of that school came Otis Sistrunk, who was a famous football player. Out of that school came Marilyn McCoo, and because her father was the dentist in my hometown. There were 2 dentists in the black neighborhood called the Bottom. And then I crawled my little self out of there, right? And so I'm just grateful, but I just wanted to lift it up to say that the ancestors inspired you to go in that direction, because there's something about education, and you basically went to the tombstones to learn to read because they didn't give you any resources, right? You had to start from scratch. So I want to hear about the impact and the inspiration for TEACH. Please. Willie, thank you.
I think for me, I think we said in the documentary, the part that we wanted to get education is because it was a lack of education, right? They wasn't offering us anything, especially if you had a long sentence as we did at that time. So for me, it was that part of, if you don't want to give it to us, we're going to go get it. So it was that liberation aspect of it, right? And I think just like you said, it's deeper than us, right? It's the ancestries. We're just in the right place at the right time. I always say that, I always say things are destined, and God got his plans the way they are supposed to be. Mm-hmm. So for us, we was just implemented into that circumstance at that right time, at that right place, at that right moment, from those higher above, right? Because like you said, starting from the headstones to now, we're basically in the headstones, starting education in the headstones, because we're at the bottom. We're in these prison systems where they throw you away and lock you away, and they don't care about they don't care how you change, they don't care about your transition, they don't care about anything. They got anything to do with you but how much they're gonna make off of you. Right? So for us, that's that part that really stood out for me and made me hungry and made me understand that I wanted more, not only for me, but for a community. I wanted more for those around me. And I think what, like he said, what was a eye-awakening moment for me is sitting in the circle, right? And it was, an elder came and they said something, and it just showed how much we really meant to community and how much we meant to society. So for me, that was that moment. I was like, okay, we got to continue this.
That's right.
No matter the trials and the tribulations and the hardships and everything we're going through, because you have to understand this wasn't easy at all. Not only was we dealing with the administration, we was also dealing with the culture inside.
Right.
And we're in one of the worst prisons at this time inside of Washington. So for us, it was an uphill battle, but it was one that we wasn't going to lose, right? So that was that mission. That was that point. And I was like, I want more for me. I want more for community. I want more for ourselves. So for me, that was that moment that I was like, we're going to continue this. Because just like you said, it was not easy at all. Like it was, we literally we was up nights, some nights 3, 4 in the morning, blood shedding tears, right? To try to get this program started, to continue this thing, because we seen it was worked. We seen we bridged that culture gap inside, and we seen the change demographically all around the different institutions in the state of Washington. So for us, it was one of them odd moments. It was one of them amazing moments, and I always keep God with me. So it was planned.
Thank you.
When I think about like our journey, right? Because me and Willie both did 25 years in Washington State straight, right? No breaks, no furloughs, no return after a couple of years, 25 straight years. And so when I think about the seeds that was planted early in us, sitting in a circle, right? The stories that we was hearing about Dr. Mims way back in the 70s, you know what I'm saying? And how she was the ones who inspired all of the women that we admired. Right? The Dr. Shepherds, you know what I'm saying, the Janet Prestons, the Mary Flowers. Listen, all of the women who were coming in to the BPC circles week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out were the ones who were helping us to understand how valuable we were as black men.
That's right, absolutely.
Right? And so as we sat in that circle and we began to understand exactly, you know, not only what our capacity was, but what was the things that we needed to really sharpen each other up, right? And all of the fingers pointed back to the thing that we ran from, education, you know? And so, and it helped me to realize, right, is that the long way is the shortcut. Because for most of us, what ended up happening is we ditched and dodged school so much when we was kids that when we became adults, then we realized that, oh yeah, education is where we gotta kind of get to it. So then we end up having to go back to school and do all those assignments that we were supposed to do back then anyway, right? But you know, I think that the thing that we was able to take away from us being able to create our own program was ownership. It was ownership.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things that we was able to recognize was, you know, that we have the capacity of being able to create some great things. And what we refuse to do is to let somebody get credit who don't deserve it. Right? Who don't deserve it. And so too many times, prisoners, and this is in our experience over these 25 years, and I'm pretty sure there was many more examples, not just here in Washington, but across the country and probably across the world, when there's been prisoner-initiated programs that was created by prisoners on the inside, that was supported by people in the community, and then ultimately what was happening is it was taken from us. Right? Our great idea, right? These prisoners who then came up with this wonderful idea, all of a sudden someone from the community who's been trying to help these poor little lonely old prisoners found that this idea that they came up with can be lucrative.
Yeah.
I can quit my other job and do this full time. And there's been multiple examples of where we had to learn the hard lesson. And so the BPC Teach was an opportunity for us to be able to get it right. Right? It was an opportunity for us to be able to say, you know what? This is our opportunity of being able to initiate a prisoner-led liberation education program that is ultimately created, facilitated, and maintained by the people it was destined to help. And it was people on the inside.
All right.
So, you know, our objective was to be able to make sure that it reflected the culture that we was trying to create, right? And even as in prison, there's many different cultures, many different politics that exist, but we wanted to be able to make sure that everybody had access to education, regardless of what your politics were, right? So if you allowed whatever your politics were to prevent you from coming to class, then that's your fault. But what you wasn't about to see was a door that was shut to you by people who was in the exact same condition that you was in. You know what I'm saying? We realized that in order for us to be able to liberate one, we had to liberate all, right? And so that's ultimately where we came from. It was about liberation.
Thank you.
The main thing I'd like to say about the Teach Education program is it brought my son home.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
Willie, I started seeing the betterment. I started seeing him change. That change led him to be the first person in our family to get an associate's degree.
Come on now. Woo! Awesome.
While in prison, he got an associate degree, and also that betterment was all filmed in Gilda's documentary. She was able to get us a little piece of that documentary to the judge. The judge viewed it, and in that judge's decision, 65 years were taken off of Willie's sentence. That's how I say the Teach education brought my son home.
All right now.
It brought Carter home too.
I know that's right.
It's going to bring a lot more home too, because
Yes.
there's a lot of Willies,
Yes.
and a lot of Comanches still down.
That's right.
And they're in the men and women's prison as well as in juvenile detention.
That's right.
And I just want to say that these gentlemen, they were always into education. They weren't into these schools.
Come on now.
There's a difference. I did research on both of them in order to do my the documentary. And I learned this from Dr. Maxine Mims, who is, reason why I have a PhD is because of her. She got a lot of black women together in her house, a big round, I don't know, about 20 women. And she says, everyone, you're gonna get your PhD. We're like, That was her teach. Right? And so I'm sitting here because of her. Because she understood the difference between school and education. And she merged the two things together because the Black Prisoners Caucus symbol is the Sankofa bird. And that's an Adinkra symbol from Ghana, West Africa, but it's also from Senegal, but you know they cut us all up, right? And,
Right.
And it means go back and fetch it. Don't forget who
That's
you
right.
are.
That's
And
right.
that's what Dr. Maxine Mims. And when I came to teach there, she said, oh, you're a sociologist. I don't usually hire a sociologist. I was like, she said, because you're so full of pathos. Look at the pathology of things. And that, you know, you think about the Moynihan report that blamed black women for blah, blah, blah. And he was a liberal white guy.
Yeah.
You know, those of us who voted for the Clintons and probably would vote for them again. Who else are you going to vote for? But what does that mean? Voting means that that's where you start. It's like a reentry program.
Yeah.
It says in the prison, when you walk into prison, that's your first step of reentry. Even though that doesn't happen. When you vote, that's your first step of fighting like I don't know what for justice. Right? And I think that that's the example of the TEACH program. Taking education, not changing history, taking education and creating history, not pathos. Not look back and say, woe is me. Woe is me.
All
But
right.
it says like, oh no, you see me on my knees, I'm only getting up. And that's what I learned from the great Dr. Maxine Mims. And I'm continuing to learn from my pastor, the Reverend Dr. Yes, indeed, Kelly Brown.
Thank you. I'm deeply honored and I'm grateful. I want to lift you up, Jenny, because you know, you're just so unassuming and so deeply and profoundly powerful. And I would love to hear, just to lift it up so that we can be aware more about families shoulder to shoulder.
I started Family Shoulder to Shoulder after Willie's resentencing hearing. The judge at the resentencing hearing said something that resonated with me. He said in all his time on the bench, he had never seen that much court support for anybody.
Wow.
And that made me think we have to continue to do this. For our community has to come
Everybody.
together and show the judges and the prosecutors that we are accepting, we are wanting our incarcerated population back home, our loved ones. But when I first, the reason that the court hearing was so impactful was because when Willie was first sentenced to 96 years in prison, I was alone in that courtroom by myself with just me and my husband. I didn't know anybody, I had no fight in me, I didn't know how to fight. If you fast forward to 2018 when he had a chance to be resentenced, we had 42 support letters from him, we had 16 organizations in that courtroom, and the whole courtroom was packed. that's what I thought. That's why I continue to do what I do, and we're having huge success in Pierce County. But we don't just write support letters for people. We don't just show up to court for them. We also, not supply, that's not the right word. We give families that emotional support that they need that's always lacking in these hearings.
That's right.
And so that's the main thing that I do. I've gained an entire family of women and grandmothers and fathers that we've come together to become an entire community of families that support each other. And that's what I love about it.
I just want to say one thing about Jenny. See, Jenny not only helps those who have harmed, right? You know, and so that we can look at redemption and the role of justice. But Jenny understands the importance of healing for the people who are the victims.
Right.
Jenny's not on one side of the fence. Jenny understands that family shoulder to shoulder does not have a boundary on it, but she moves that boundary.
Yeah.
She steps, as Tanya Wilson says, into her brave space and dares to go over to the victims' family. But as Tanya says, the perpetrators are victims and the victims are perpetrators. So she takes on that dialectic when it comes to justice and healing. That's Jenny Parham. She understands. And she says in the film that she is both a victim also.
That's right.
So she has proximal relationship with that. But not only that, it is her mind, heart, and wherever the soul is, that she understands the importance of healing on many different pathways. Let's give her another hand.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to give you a hand for remaining sane.
Yeah.
I'm serious, you know, because there are moments where you don't know how to hold on.
That's right.
And that's no small feat. And so for you to be able to do everything else you're doing is nothing but a witness to how powerful you are, but also how the universe fed some energy to you to keep you going through. Come on now, I'm trying not to preach up in here, but okay. I'm wondering about time, friends, because I want to honor. So can we move to? All right. Questions from the audience and such. All right, friends, we just want to give you some time to just really respond and to honor. This is really an important conversation that's happening. And, you know, Dr. Shepherd, you have done something here by bottling this lightning for us. And I am forever grateful to you for your inspiration and for following this thread. Because what I know is we want to figure out who's getting married to whom and who's dating who and who got a new album out and then got it taken off the internet in 2 hours, and you know what I'm talking about. Okay. Mr. Kelly in prison and all these other pieces. But we forget these stories. That's the undergirding and the foundation for who we are together, and you are so much a part of it. So I want to welcome those of you online and those of you in the room. If you have questions, we would love to take a few. All right, here we are, and Ian will come to you with a microphone.
Hi, I'm Sarah, thank you. I wanted to ask you how you decided to create this movie. I know you said you tried with the women's and it was about children, but like, how did your life and this movie come to be created?
I believe in magic, full disclosure, and sometimes that magic has the other M word, miracle.
All right.
Okay. I just finished an ethnographic documentary in a refugee camp in Ghana, West Africa, Liberian refugee camp. You know, and so at the end of that short ethnography, the woman who was the head of the camp said, you know, Sis Gilda, the same AK-47s that you see in the child soldiers' hands in Liberia's civil war are in your children's hands. And you need to do something about that.
All right now.
Yeah. You know, what kind of compassion is that?
Yeah.
You know, international solidarity. And, you know, there's a tendency that Dr. Maxine Mims warned me about, you know, how social sciences will go far, far away. There's nothing wrong with that, but not make the connections.
Yeah, right.
And you need to put your ear to, well, I needed to put my ear to the ground and always listen to the subject. And just as Kamanti says in the film, it's one thing studying the subject, it's another thing being the subject.
My mind.
And so isn't that profound? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. You know, we called it discursive blah, 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 you know. And so I found myself, Dr. Marcia Tatarunga, who is the dean at Evergreen Tacoma now, she had stopped, she was going to get her PhD, and she said, you know, you want to teach sociology classes in prisons. I was like, well, thank you. You know, that was the magic and the miracle, and it started right there on the ground with this woman who's a refugee, had been a refugee for about 10 years. And I can't tell you what she went through and how she developed hope and gave me direction. I found myself teaching in men and women's prisons for about 15 years, and it took me about 13 of those years to do this documentary, right? And there you have it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, good day, one and all.
Good
Tana
day.
Yasu. And it's not so much of a question. Well, it is a question. Do you know what a diamond looks like when it's found?
A what? Diamond.
A diamond. What
What a
comes to mind
diamond
with this
looks like
situation
when it's
is
found.
over 500 years of pressure on our people. And then what has happened to you all going into those prisons, the belly of the beast. You went in as diamonds, black, rough diamonds that no one could recognize your value, your worth, but it was in there, and you pulled it out. And with these classes, with this teach and this work you all are doing and this BPC, that just created those facets. And now you're coming out, and look at you up there just glistening. Just glistening. So I want us all to remember, we have so much wealth, talent, expertise, transferable skills. If you can sell crack, you can sell anything.
Well, true that.
You know what I'm saying? So, I just appreciate you all. I appreciate your work. I appreciate you, Queen, Mother, strong, so inspiring. And I'm just looking forward to working with you all in any, whatever capacity. I'm connected with the Seattle Women's Commission. I'm connected with WINA, the organization that has brought affirmative action back to Washington State after 25 years. I'm connected with BPC. I've been to Monroe. So, and there's some other stuff, but I don't like talking about myself that much. Anyway, thank you. Beautiful black diamonds, don't forget that.
That's right. Thank you. As we're preparing for the next question, I just want to say this for myself and for this group. You raised that, there, we don't understand how much we are a part of a script, and we can choose how we play, right? And what we want to do is to lift up the fact that when you are teaching, I want to be your first student, right? Or I want to be a student in your classes, right? And I'm hoping that people will resist exploiting you and pour all the energy your way so that you can make what you deserve to make as a part of what you've been through, but also who you are and the gifts that you have. So I just want to say that out loud, that is important for us to build places where that's possible and beyond probable, because I'm already like, I'm hoping the book is in the works, right? I'm hoping that, you know, whatever it is, because we have those systems in other places, we just don't talk about it, right? Where it's like you're pushing certain peoples or certain communities in certain ways, but this is a part of this, that we want to lift up who you are and to empower you to know, yes, you're Black Diamonds, and also that we're going to do what we can to be a circle, like we would call it in the Black church, a fence around you, so that exploitation is less likely to happen. So I just want to say that in person, because the thing that we can do in terms of anti-racism, in terms of anti-oppression of every kind, is that if you have a problem with racism, we aren't trying to throw you away. We say, get thee to a person of color and let them be your professor and let them be responsible for your grade. That is the best way to be anti-racist, because you learn how to value what they are teaching and how to value what they give back to you. And it takes away this sort of natural propensity towards power, and it becomes power sharing versus power wielding. So that was just a free drop. But I just want to say to you all that, you know, there's a story of redemption, and we know very well what you have done. And we also know that that has not as much to do with who you are as we think. And so I want very much for you to hear that as long as I'm living, I'm going to push the energy your way. I'm going to push the energy.
We're going to be tapping into that energy.
I know, that's right.
Yes.
And that's what I'm inviting you to do, because there are people in the world who are wedges, and there are people in the world who are gatekeepers and keep the door closed because they want to sit on the can. What is the thing? Get all you can all you get, and sit on the lid. That's the story. That's the story of the United States and the gaining of wealth. Get all you can all you get, and sit on the lid. And what we are inviting is that all of us, if we all are gaining it together, then all of us will gain, right? And this is what we need to understand. What is it? All boats rise in the water. And so that's what I'm offering, that we do for these two gentlemen and all the others, women and folks of every gender who are in the similar circumstances. Please, that's right. Lift from the bottom, everybody rises. Thank you, yes. Karen. Another question here, and I'm not sure how we are with time. I think we are wanting to move towards, okay, 10 more minutes? All right, thank you.
All right, thanks y'all. I'm Autumn. And on that track of, other than being professors of anti-Black racism and giving out grades for that, I'm curious what y'all are up to at this moment in your lives, really all of you. Whatever that means for you, either in healing journey or in like the work you're doing in community. I'm just curious where you are now.
So the microphone, it was muffled by your mask. And so I'm going to ask if you might say at least most of that again, please.
Sorry. I'm Autumn. And what I'm curious to hear about, other than being professors of anti-Black racism and giving out grades, I'm curious what you're doing in your lives right now, whether that be about your healing journey or about the work you're doing in community. I'm just curious what you're up to.
All right.
So I would say, man, I got out July 22nd.
Wow. That's
and
amazing.
so, at this point, I've been really just taking everything as it comes, right? Not really trying to rush anything. And I think I've been, kind of intentionally, pacing myself, right? Because, being able to kind of just get thrown back out into the world, it can become overwhelming, right? And if you don't have good support, if you don't have a good network to be able to really share your ideas, pose some of the good questions to you, but also be able to really be your sounding board. And that's what we are. When I say we, I'm talking about the brothers who have also was sitting in the circle on the inside who are now free, who are working in many capacities, whether it's with reentry or reintegration, whether it's with advocacy, whether it's with amplifying the voices on the inside. First and foremost, we're trying to bring the BPC to the community, right? And so that's what we're doing. I'm participating in as a way of being able to make sure that the door that let me out, that let Willie out, that let many of our other brothers out, don't close. And then in the meantime, I'm doing a little consulting, just trying to help people understand, how we can really be accountable.
They're right now.
Because it's important.
That's right.
It's important to do accountable work.
That's right.
And so if you want to be able to work in the interest of people who are impacted by any type of injustice, you must take their lead.
That's right.
You must. You know what I'm saying? Because if not, you're doing more harm to their cause than you are good. And so, and I just think that that's what I'm really doing is just sharing my life experience with, organizations and programs as a way of helping them to understand how they can be accountable and how they can really be of service to the groups that they're trying to support. So, other than, showing up to places like this and speaking with Dr. Shepard.
That's right.
Working with the brothers in the community and, and consulting, man, I think that's really what takes up a lot of our time. And also building relationships in community.
Thank you.
And so we've been definitely tapping into all the organizations out here that's connected to reentry, housing, substance abuse, anything that we realize can ultimately become, some support and resources for people transitioning. We're trying to make sure that we kind of shore all those things up. So that's the work that I'm involved in.
Can I add to what he's doing? When he says consultant, I don't want you to think that, that he's sitting there telling people what to do. Because when he says work, it doesn't mean that you be a puppet.
Right.
That you even question him. That's what he beckons. That you put, but also what he's developed as part of his consultancy is developing a curriculum for the film.
All right.
Okay.
Powerful.
And the film is going to be shown on 30,000 free tablets nationally.
Wow.
In prisons, men and women prisons, jails, and juvenile detention. So when they see the film, then his curriculum in concert with the BPC and community, because he never does anything by himself. When you hear
That's right.
Kamanti, you need to hear plural.
That's right.
That's how he rolls. That's just how he rolls.
Yeah.
Right? And so I just want to I don't want you to think he's sitting back getting some fat money and he's consulting.
Right.
Now, quite frankly, he needs to get the fat money.
I know, that's right. Absolutely.
But he's, what I'm telling you he's doing is using his skill, his privilege in a responsible way.
All right now.
He understands education.
Right.
And the development of that. He and Willie.
That's
so
right.
it's like,
Professors.
Yes, they're professors, organic intellectuals.
Absolutely.
So that's what he's doing. I just wanted to add to
Thank you.
Besides the work that I do with Family Shoulder to Shoulder, in my personal life, I'm raising a grandson. I've had him for 2 years. He is ADHD and ODD, and so I'm really working closely with him and the schools, because what I see in the schools is they're already trying to start paperwork that's going to lead him from school to prison pipeline. They're trying to create that right now. So I'm working really closely with him in my personal life, because I absolutely refuse to lose another child to the system.
I know that's right.
What have I been doing? Not getting exploited. Exploited. I ain't gonna stop that fast. But I think for me, it's the work. Like being accountable and being able to be in spaces that people respect and that we respect others. I think that's the work that we're doing, especially like he said, starting
Yeah.
BPC community group, and us being able to give us the things that we need and being able to help us the way we need to in community. That's what we're doing. I also work at right now. I work for Fabian's Fund, so I help the inside, I help the curriculums, and I help BPC teach, and BPC inside still with the stuff they need. So I'm the liaison to them and make sure that they have everything and everything runs smooth on the inside. And shoot, I'm doing the work.
Yes, you
Right?
are.
I'm here. I'm ready to work.
Do you have
I'm
a
working
question?
on 2 films, 2
Woo,
new films.
Come on.
I just want to let you know that, okay? One is, and it's done by, like I told you, I love children more than you could ever imagine. One is going to be shot by children, filmed by children, ages 8 through 17, who I said, what is your name? My name is Azzy. I use he and him pronouns. I'm like, oh. And then tell them to use their pronouns. These are black kids, brown kids, you know, one young woman with blue hair from Covington said, my name is, she gave her name, and I use they, them pronouns. And it's kids youth between the ages of 8 and 17, and they're looking at their experience with equity and inequity. This is a response to this critical race theory culture I teach critical race theory, okay? But how they're using that as a dog whistle to stop kids from critically thinking. So, and they're chosen their own issues. One is even the metaverse.
All right.
How is the metaverse going to create equity or inequity? How, what's the role of environmental science, political economy, Why does the pizza cost this much in a public school and different in a private school? And then from that thing, she went to what are the resources in this public school as opposed to this private school? And they're not saying that cancel culture. They're not into that kind of allegedly woke stuff. They're not into that. They want real critical discourse. And the name of the film is Critical What? So watch out for it. It's going to be phenomenal. The other film I'm doing is science fiction, Afrofuturism, one that's called Tricky. So it's my narrative film. I want to go into narrative. And it's tricky because I'm concerned about the kind of culture that big companies like Amazon, Google, and all of them are creating. So this is 30 years in the future. And it starts in where they're bringing robots in to manage a particular warehouse. And I have this array of characters, from a witch and a healer, a sex worker and a creative, a kid. I mean, it's going to be out of sight. And it's called Tricky because that's what it is.
It is
They
tricky.
give you a job, and then next thing you know, they're giving you a school and a house. And Amazon is even thinking about scripts, their own money. And you know what they do? They study addiction. Of course they do. How many times have you been on your phones?
I know that's right.
I know. So, anyway, so that's that. You asked what I'm doing.
Woo!
Yes.
I'm going to share a question from one of our virtual streaming guests. Janet asks, in today's news, I heard that the last California jail was ending its contract to be an immigration detention center. What action items do you suggest for people to take to decrease prison beds and move towards restorative justice models?
So I'm going to try to repeat. It said that there's a prison in California is the last prison to receive detention folks who are seeking asylum. Is that, I may have put that in. So, but we're asking about restorative justice. Please, one more.
Action items. Sorry. Do you suggest for people to take to decrease the prison beds and move towards restorative justice models?
All right.
I was going to ask if Janet is in California. If not, I would definitely, if she wants to learn how she can become a better organizer around prison issues, then she needs to connect herself to a prison organization that's already doing that work. You know what I'm saying? Because the thing about it is like it's great for people to be inspired, right? It's something completely different for her to be able to kind of set out on her own and then start to do the work that she feels that she needs to do. So there's no need to recreate the wheel. If just in California, it's just like here in Washington and many other states, there's people who are doing the work already on the ground. They're going inside to the prisons. They're meeting with prisoners. They're already having restorative justice conversations about decreasing the prison population and all that type of stuff. Tell her to tap into the organization, which is, I would say, closest to her, or anyone that she knows that is doing restorative justice work, circles, healing work, and start there. Get involved. Start volunteering, because that's where we're going to make the difference.
I'd also want to say we've had House Representative Roger Goodman, who's gone over to Norway.
Norway.
And several other people have gone over to Norway to start looking at the models over there for
That's
prisoners.
right.
We have our first model in Oregon, and now they're practicing it in Stafford Creek. So they're trying to bring that Norwegian model of housing prisoners and getting less beds, and so we're trying to bring that restorative process over here.
I think that what Jenny said is that there is no magic formula. This is what you do, right? But it's also the proximity that Kamanti talked about. There's always somebody on the ground doing the work.
That's right.
And you're not reinventing the wheel, but you may be adding a spoke to the wheel, or maybe another wheel to it. So that you go to the subject, right? Because there's something that folks can do. And as Jenny Parham said, there are some models, but it's not one size fits all. But but there are some models, right? But what is an essential ingredient is to be proximal to the problem.
That's right.
And those folks who are working in it. Because in that group, when Kamanti and Willie and Ms. Parham talk about the circle, and when I come to church here on Sunday, even though it's not a circle, I feel like it's a circle because of the way she preaches and the way you all come together in community. I feel the circle. Okay? And that circle means that we go around together and we realize that there's a center and there's a margin. And Bell Hooks says, choose the margin as a place of radical possibility.
Yes.
Right? So what you do is you go to the margin. They know, as Mr. Zimbabwe said in the film, or Mary Flowers says in the film, do you think that the person sleeping under the bridge knows what they can do to solve the problem, or solving the problem? It's a gerund, solving the problem. Dare to go to the subject. And so, no magic formula. I don't. Because the sense of discovery and wonder happens when there's no magic formula.
That's right. Thank you. And so the other piece for me as a Christian minister, but also one who considers herself interfaith, one of the pieces about circle work is the truth telling, right? Because we do need to go that place. 3 years ago, I believe this week, I was down in Tijuana in San Diego visiting one of those detention centers. Just brand new friends, state of the art. We tried to get in, they were like, oh, no. We were like, we just want to make sure that folks are, properly fed, and no. But one of the things that I know is that, yes, it's going to be all of that groundwork, but it's also doing the work of being honest about how much is fueled by anti-Brown sentiments. And how even in this state, the places that are within 100 miles of the border, there's all manner of stuff happening that we don't know about, right? Because we're trying to get on Amazon and get our Christmas presents. And I'm not judging because I'm trying to do the same thing. But I am saying that it's about educating, but it's also about the hard work that it takes to know what is happening and to know, once again, bringing it back to what you offered at the beginning, Dr. Shepherd, to know that it's not about the two guards, but it's about us and how we engage. So in California, the reduction of beds is saying that we don't want to live in a society where we punish like that anymore. The reduction of beds comes to, why are we spending all that money for the building of new places and the privatization of new institutions and all of that stuff, when we could really be building housing for the folks who are under the bridges, right?
Right.
And so that's what it comes down to. So I am super grateful, and I wanted to also say, because this is the first time I met you in person, Kamanti, I don't know this to be a fact, but during COVID, we were virtual in terms of worship. And there are people who, liked it and people who loved it, and there were people who didn't. But I want to say that Kamanti Carter is the first person that I'm aware of to preach a sermon while incarcerated.
That's right, you did.
Because Kamanti and Dr. Shepherd had a conversation, which we played as the sermon.
Yeah.
Here in this church.
Where'd I do that?
But that's what this temple can do.
That's right.
You know, I remember reading this book, Parting the Water, by, I can't think of the guy's name. He's a historian. Anyway, he talked about the Baptist church and all the churches, places of worship, and how it became a space where you felt love thy neighbor as thyself was a practice, a political practice. I'm not afraid of the word political.
That's right.
Sociologically, it means power. And so I'm not afraid of that word. I think everything's political. I think the way you walk is political.
That's right.
If you walk, it's political, right?
That's right.
The way you wear your hair is political. It's power.
Right.
Those kinds of things. But yeah, oh my goodness, that's right, Kamanti.
And I just wanted to say that it won't be the last time if you're open. I would love to have both of you come and to do this space, to be in this space.
I would love
because it's not about, in this Christian space, we have a cross here, but it's not about what you claim. It's not that you claim anything. I'm the kind of interfaith pastor that says, for folks who consider themselves atheist, agnostic, pagan, who believe in magic, you are welcome here. And so I'm grateful for this conversation. I am grateful to each of you for your kindness to sit so long, but also to know that you are being fed in your very lives by being here. And I know that however you came in, you will not leave in the same manner. Thank you.
So with that, I want to say thank you again to all 4 of our panelists and Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown for moderating.
We need to thank her too, because
Thank you, Sharon.
she worked hard to get this happening. Thank you.
And thank you all for coming so much. There's still some snacks left out in the lounge, so feel free to take some. And, we're taking some pictures.
All right. I'm going to take my glasses off because my fake eyelashes.
I love it. What is it?
Can everyone stand behind?
So if everybody wants to come up in front of the panel area.
Okay, you can do a selfie. Come on, everybody.
Everybody come
on up.
Take a selfie from where you are. Yay!
Oh, I know. Yes, you do.
Okay, and I need one. Okay, come on, everybody.
Indigo, please take one for us, too. All right. She said, well, yeah, she get in there.
And if anyone feels inclined to donate any more money, you can come talk to anyone wearing a Poor People's Campaign t-shirt.
Oh, yeah, come in
or
front,
check out the
friends.
QR code that's
Come in
up
front.
on the screen behind me.
Yeah, you can move the
Thank
sign.
you, everybody.